Dear church, let's continue our series 10 Questions for 10 Preachers with Boo Scott. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. My guest, the famous, the legendary Boo Scott, good friend of mine. Boo, thank you so much for coming on to close out our 10 Questions for 10 Preachers series. We wanted to have the seasoned veteran to come on, the guy who's been at National Park Church of Christ for how long now?
9 months.
9 months. So you've got me beat.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Veteran standard is 9 months. Yeah.
That's right. So glad that you came on. And I really wanted to get your perspective because we've had you on before to talk about college ministry.
Right.
And I felt like you were kind of the guru in that area, one of the leaders in that ministry. And so now we've got you on as you've transitioned to local work as the preacher in Hot Springs, Arkansas at the National Park Church of Christ. What has that been like? How's your family adjusted? How have you adjusted to work there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's first off, man, I love you and I really appreciate this. And I miss you. I don't get to, our paths used to cross some and now I feel like they're not going to cross as much. But anyways.
Well, I think they might, Boo, because I didn't realize until you texted me after I took the job. Your dad lives here. Is that right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes. And I've talked to you a little bit about that, but yeah, our paths make it. That's true. Yeah. Just ministry wise, we kind of walk in the same circles, but who knows? Lord willing, we will again.
Yeah.
But, man, the transition's been great. I was in college ministry for 13 years, loved it. But you get to a point in some ministries where you feel like you've given them all you can give and maybe it's time to move on. And that's kind of where we were at. And this job came open. We heard about it. And honestly, I really wasn't looking to be a preacher. I love preachers, but I really wasn't looking to be a preacher. And this job, my title is lead minister. And they were really looking for somebody to preach and be more of a, help guide the whole church and all the ministries into a healthy place. And so that kind of piqued my interest because it was it was a broader role. And so it was exciting because this church was just primed to grow. They were just ready, willing, excited, and they just needed some direction and a little bit of experience coming in with direction and leadership. And so hopefully that's what we've been able to provide to some extent and still are providing, but it's going really great. We're growing and man, the people are awesome and they're excited and it makes us excited. So, any transition after you've been somewhere for a long time is hard. It's hard on the kids to think about making new friends. It's hard for us to leave dear friends that are still dear friends, but that's just life, and change is good. It's uncomfortable, but it's good sometimes, and so that's kind of where we're at right now, for sure.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, being somewhere 14 years, like you were 13. It has been difficult, but it's been good as well. And I've learned that you can miss where you came from and love where you're at the same time. And as a native Arkansan, you are in a very pretty part of the world. I can tell you that, as you know.
Yeah, landscape wise and being a guy who loves to be outdoors. Yeah, it's a huge plus for sure.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you came into ministry. I know this story, but I want our viewers and listeners to hear this story because it's not unlike mine in some cases. But I want you to tell us kind of how you became a minister, how you became a Christian and then got into ministry, but also who are some of the people who helped you along the way and got you to this point.
Yeah, I'll give you the abbreviated version, or we're going to be here longer than 30 minutes.
It's another podcast.
I became a Christian when I was 19, and my family. I come from a divorced family. Kind of my ex-stepdad's parents raised me and my brother, and kind of a divided, busted up family, but great family. I love all my family. I became a Christian when I was 19. A friend from high school studied with me I'd kind of hopped around churches as a kid at Christmas, Easter, those kind of things like families do. And my friend studied with me. I was at the University of North Alabama in Florence, and I was working a summer job back at home in Mount Pleasant, Tennessee. And my friend from high school kind of engaged me in conversation because he was working with me. I became a Christian that summer of 2009. He was going to Freed-Hardeman University. He said, "Boo, you need to come to Freed. It'll bless you tremendously." And I thought, dude, I can't go to an Ivy League school. I'm not that smart. I thought it was an Ivy League school because it was so expensive compared to public school. And he's like, "No, dude, it's nothing like that." I said, "All right, well, I'll apply. I probably won't get in." Of course, I got in, and man, went to Freed-Hardeman, rocked my world, changed my life. I'd never been around a place like this. I'd never been around people that hugged you all the time and were weird like that, and it was cool. And I mean, obviously going to a place like Freed-Hardeman, like it opened my world up to the church in a bigger scale than just my local church that I was a part of in Mount Pleasant. It surrounded me with guys that really poured into me and encouraged me and helped lead me to ministry ultimately. And of course, it's where I met my wife, Amanda. And so then, after graduating Freed-Hardeman, Amanda and I moved to Texas because that's where her family was at. And so we didn't know where to go, where to move, what to do. We both had degrees in art and minors in different things. And so we moved to Texas. We moved to Lewisville, Texas. The youth minister in Lewisville at the time was Tony Hall, and he was struggling with brain cancer. And unfortunately, he would die soon. And so there was a gap there. They needed somebody helping with the youth ministry while they looked to fill that position. Amanda and I naturally stepped into that. We worked with the youth a lot. So we ended up going to camps and things like that. Lewisville would go on to hire me on as the part-time youth minister, along with Reed Swindle, who was the youth minister there that they hired on full-time. So just through camps and all that, I got to know people in the Oklahoma, Texas area within ministry. I was doing accounts payable. I was doing odd end jobs just to have money. Still really didn't want to be in ministry. Never really planned to be in ministry. But I believe that God pulled me to it, led me to it in various ways. But so anyways, I got to know Philip Johnson, who was a preacher at Westside Church of Christ in Norman, Oklahoma. He was previously the college minister. I got to know him through camp. He said, "Boo, you should really come try out for this position." I told him no like 5 times. And then finally, my father-in-law was like, "I really think you should check this out. Like, there's a reason that you keep getting asked. There's a reason that like they're waiting on you to at least give them a shout, I was like, all right, well, I'll try it. I'll go try out. I'll go speak or whatnot. Went, loved it. Was like, man, this is cool. And college ministry, I became a Christian in college. My heart was in it. Amanda, of course, her heart was all in. And yeah, we were there 13 years. I mean, and that's like, and that's what led to, that's the abbreviated version of how I got to where I am now. So after 13 years, here I am helping lead a church in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So, yeah.
Well, I do want to make this point, and I think most people who are watching or listening know this, but Jeff Jenkins is your father-in-law. Many people know Jeff. We jokingly say he is the president of the Church of Christ. But so that was a big influence on your life, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're married to Amanda,
right.
3 beautiful children. I guess they're all adapting and adjusting well.
They are, yeah. They've had their days, their moments where they were sad and, they miss their friends. They miss our home in Oklahoma, but they're adapting well and they've made a lot of new friends. And of course the church has surrounded us and helped us with all of that. But yeah, it's been good.
Good.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. Tell us what you think is the most important attribute for a preacher to have.
Man, the most important attribute in my limited experience would be authenticity and just transparency. I don't
Yeah.
think, from my experience in college ministry and now with here helping lead this place, people are just yearning for somebody that's real, somebody that's honest with them, somebody that's not there to just be a good speaker or, get pats on the back or, be a big name or anything like that. People just want somebody to love them and lead them and be honest with them and truly, truly be the church. I think people are just yearning for that, just to truly, everybody's so sick of consumeristic church. They're just looking for a body of people that are truly pursuing Christ and looking for leaders that are truly in their own lives trying their best to pursue Christ. And
Yeah.
and when you're authentic and real, I mean, my experience has been they'll forgive you for a lot because they know you're human. They know you're not perfect. And yeah, it's, I think
Yeah.
that's really one of the key factors in being effective is just being real and being honest and authentic for sure.
Yeah. I love that. Could not agree more. Talk about maybe your biggest challenge. I mean, you've been in ministry a while, but I want you to talk about maybe your biggest challenge when it comes to your short time of being the lead minister there at National Park. So if you're like me, perhaps when I first started out, 2 months in, I was like, well, I preached everything I know. I mean, I'm done. Like, I don't know where I'm going to get material now. I mean, have you found that to be the case? I mean, what has been the biggest challenge, I guess, in your short time there?
Well, I haven't exhausted my resources yet, Chris. I mean, I spent 15 years writing lessons. Hopefully I've got at least a year in my belt, but
Well, you're way smarter than I am too. So that's that. I mean, that's a given,
after a year, I may be like, oh shoot, I don't have anything left to tell. No, the biggest challenge, man, the biggest challenge I think is you as the lead, as the preacher, people come to you with everything. And so a big challenge is trying to delegate those things, trying to keep people plugged in and see their role in the health of the church. So it's not just you, trying to make their ideas valid. But along with that, since people come to you, they're coming to you with their problems too. And as problems, I mean like their sins and what they're struggling with. And they share that with you. And man, if you love them, it weighs on you. And it's trying to keep a big picture focus while at the same time trying to minister to individuals and trying to not let their burdens weigh you down, but to give their burdens to God as along with your burdens and to help them walk through those things and get them the right people in their lives that they need in their lives, whether that's professional counselors, whether that's doctors, whomever it may be. Even in 9 months, we've dealt with some heavy stuff and just some things that people have in their lives. And so for me, the biggest challenge is not necessarily putting together lessons, preaching, any of that. That's challenging. But the biggest challenge is trying to help people in their personal lives and trying to balance that I have a duty to lead this congregation. I have a duty to present God's word. I want to pour a lot of time into that. You're leading events as a preacher. You're involved in so much stuff, but at the same time, you got people coming, sitting on your couch and telling you what they've done, and it breaks your heart. It absolutely breaks your heart. And so it's how do I handle that and handle all the things that I have to get done on a weekly basis. And obviously you pray with them, you pray for them. But it's a unique job. I mean, there aren't many jobs where you have a lot of things you have to get done, just to be productive and counsel people at the same time to a certain level where you're comfortable counseling them. And so to me, that's the biggest challenge so far.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, so let's talk about the biggest blessing. What has been the biggest blessing since you've been in ministry as lead minister there?
Oh, the people. I mean, and so, yeah, you deal with the burdens, but the joys outweigh the burdens. And just being able to do life together, being able to share in people's lives with them, being able to sit around a table and share a meal, week in and week out with different members, different visitors. Ministry is our life. This church is our life. We don't do ministry by, you don't see us here Sunday and Wednesday and you never see us again. Like we live life with our members and with our church family, and we're in their homes, they're in our homes. And what a huge blessing that is. I mean, just knowing what it's like to not be a part of the church. I've been blown away by the church since I became a member of the church, and it still never ceases to amaze me just how amazing and how cool the church is, and that God actually knew what he was doing, that he put us in this body that represents Christ, and that he told us he would give us the abundant life. And I think that's a big part of what the full abundant life is sharing life with people and not doing it isolated and alone.
Yeah. I know that one of the biggest challenges, at least for me, in starting a new work is finding that rhythm, that day-to-day routine. Talk a little bit about that. What does your work week look like? Kind of lay it out for us from week to week. What does the Sunday through Sunday look like?
Yeah. Well, they all look different. Week to week looks different depending on what events we have going on Sunday. And so, but typically, I mean, I come in the office fairly early. I'm in the office about 4 days out of the week, at least for a certain set amount of time. I do my best in the office as far as organization, writing, study, all of that. I need to be in an office. I know that some preachers don't spend that much time in an office. I function well in an office, so I like it. So I come in on Monday morning, and I have my 3 lessons for the week, like my outlines pretty much already. I know what I'm talking about that week. I don't have them fleshed out yet. I don't have them fully ready to roll, but I get my lessons ready to roll. And so then I also go through visitor cards. I make contacts, say thank you for being here, all that jazz, and then kind of do that. And then there's a million other things on my desk. Like right now, yesterday we had our ministry sign-up day, and so I've got a stack of ministry forms that I need to go through and kind of look at who signed up for what, and make sure all of our ministry leads get those contacts. We've got several new members that I have to get plugged into our Breeze system. And I'm doing a lot of this right now because we don't currently have a secretary. Now, granted, that would take some of this stuff off my plate, but, just a lot of busy work. I try and get the busy work out of the way early in the week. Monday, Tuesday, if there's busy work, I want to get it out of the way because, as you know, as a preacher, things pop up in your week that are unexpected. And so early on Monday, Tuesday, I want my lessons to be rolling. I want busy work to be done. So by Wednesday, if I got to meet with people, if I got to go do some visits, if unexpected things come up, if I got to go cut trees for an elderly lady, things like this, like I need to be ready to roll because I don't want to be scrambling come Friday and Saturday. And so week to week, that kind of stuff. We do a staff meeting. I touch base with my staff, make sure we're all on the same page, see if there's anything I can help them out with for the week, for the month. We go through a calendar check. What big events do we have coming up? Where are we at on those events? We do a weekly elders meeting on Wednesday nights. I touch base with the elders. We kind of talk and pray about members. I update them on the life of the congregation, just where people are at. We talk about different ministry objectives and where we're at on those ministry objectives. I check we use Monday.com, which is just an organizational work tool. We have several spreadsheets on there and different things. I go in there, I check it. So there's a lot of just keeping shop at the beginning of the week. There's just a lot of keeping shop. And then from there, depending on what events we have going on, we'll be up here setting up for events, and we'll be up here getting ready for Sunday and getting ready for Friday or Saturday, whatever day that event's taking place. So no week looks the same ever, but that's kind of my mental checklist week to week. Get office busy work done so that I can be prepared for, I know something new is going to come up this week, and
Right.
be ready. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about sermon prep. You already did. You said you like to go into the week knowing what you're going to preach and what you're going to teach. You've got an outline, not fleshed out. What does that process look like through the week?
Yeah. So I'll pick a series. Like right now, I'm going through the Gospel of Matthew. Whenever I'm planning this series, I'll go through the Gospel of Matthew. I'll pick some sections of scripture that I want to study. I can't cover them all, or we'll be studying it for 20 years, but, I go through, pick these. And so I'm going to have 12 to 24 outlines, or 12 to 24 topics that I want to teach. And so I put it on my calendar. I know what's coming. I know what's coming a month from now, what I'm planning on teaching. Granted, that can change depending on, what's happening with the life of the congregation. So I have an outline consist of, here's your topic for this week. Here's your scripture. Here's some highlights of those scriptures. Granted, I've got a cache and a pool of lessons that I've been writing for 13 years. I'll pull from those. If I've written about it before, I'll regurgitate a lot of that stuff. I'll chew on it and tell it a different way, or I'll add to it, recent life experience, things like that. I even, little reels on social media, little inspirational things that I see, I'll save those, and I'll flip through that. And if there's quotes I hear, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good one. I'll save it, And so I'm just scrolling caches and just tons of data to try and pick up on things that pop, or things that sound beneficial, things that have been beneficial to me. But really, my style is a little different, I guess. I don't typically do like a 3-point sermon. I'll typically take a text and just talk about that text. I'll break it down.
Right.
I like talking about the original language. Of course, it's good to teach in context. I like teaching it in context. I like talking about the history of what was going on then. So I try and research a lot of that stuff. Of course, I've got my authors and my podcast that I love. I'll pull from those. And so basically, I just try and form, before I ever sit down and start fleshing it out, I'll have an outline with some highlights on it. A text will be at the top, and then 3 or 4 highlights within that text. Here's a word that I find interesting. Here's a phrase that I find interesting. And here's an applicable point that I can pull from that phrase. And then I flesh it out from there. And so by the end of the day, I'll have that Sunday sermon almost fully ready to roll. And then I'll tweak it throughout the week.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's kind of how it goes.
So how about getting it? Yeah. How about getting it from the page to the pulpit? Do you practice? Do you get there early on Sunday and get up in the pulpit and preach to an empty auditorium? Do you look you stand in front of the mirror? How do you get it in your mind so that you can preach it on Sunday?
I still write my sermons, and people pick on me about this, Chris, but I still write my sermons out transcript. I write word for word. Like,
me too.
Do you really? Yeah,
I do.
If a thought comes in my head, I write it out. If like it makes me laugh, I'll put a smiley face in there. I'll even write if I'm talking too quickly in my head and I'm like, do you need to pause? I'll write in pause just to remind myself, slow down. I've tried to preach from just a template or just a bullet point deal, and I can't do it. I can. It's just I feel unsettled when I do it. And so
Me
I'll
too.
write out a transcript. I'll just type. And after I write it out, I don't ever practice really. I don't preach in front of a mirror or anything like that. I'll come to my office early on Sunday and I'll read through and I'll walk through it in my head again. And typically when I get up to preach it, I'm never reading word for word. But I know, and I
Right.
highlight it in different ways. I have bold print, or I have slide here, different slides where I know I'm transitioning at this point. And I know everything that I've thought, everything that I've, thought about at that point, and I can preach it. But at the same time, if there's something like a quote that I found, I'll bold it because I don't want to skip it accidentally. Like I
Right.
want to say it. And so I'll bold it and I'll put little stars around it. Like, make sure you say this. But I'll walk through it in my head prior to preaching it, but rarely do I practice it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah. It's just interesting to hear.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting to hear how different guys do it, and I think that changes over time as well.
Right.
I used to get up in the pulpit and preach to an empty auditorium. Now I don't, but I've been doing this 21, 22 years. I still write everything out. That's just
Right.
how I function best. And I know some people, they don't have to do, they don't even have to put any notes down, but
Right.
that's how I have to do it.
Right.
Hey, talk a little bit about with three young children, talk about how you balance your work life and your family life.
Yeah, it's difficult, as you know.
Mhm.
I mean, with 3 kids, they're involved in a lot. Um, and, especially being new to a church within the first year that you've been there, you almost put higher expectations on yourself than the congregation does. But I think that's
Yeah.
good. I think that's good to do. I think it's good to set the pace and kind of set the tone. But then you got to delegate. You got to pull people in. You can't do it by yourself, or you'll burn out quick, and you'll hurt the congregation. I mean, the congregation is not going to thrive if you try and do it by yourself. And so it's just
Yeah.
realizing that. It's understanding your limitations. It's knowing, like, you pour into what you're good at, and you don't try and do the things you're not good at. And that's just
Yeah.
what good leaders do. Like, I know my talents, I know my strengths. I'm going to pour into those, and I'm going to find people that are good at the other things and people that are passionate about the other thing. There's some things I hate doing, so I really don't want to do them. And there's some people that love to do those things. And so it's hard to not want to micromanage or to not want to do it all, because especially if you're a preacher, you're probably a leader. You have that mindset of, you have that vision of how you want things to go, and it's hard not to micromanage those. But I have to let go of those, and I have to trust God that He's going to do it the way that He wants to do it. And I understand that, like, my wife and my kids and my time spent with them is way more valuable and way more important than anything I'm doing here. And I have to keep that in my, right up here. I have to keep it in my sights and remember that, because it's easy to forget sometimes, and it's easy to
Yeah.
allow church life become your kids' life and your family life. And so you justify it by thinking, well, I am spending time with my family, but really you're just all here at the church doing church work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have to remember too,
Yes.
like, I need to spend time not doing church things with my family and invest in my kids. And so that's a big deal to me. And so I take Fridays off, which I don't know that preachers are ever off. You're always on call. And if I get a call on Friday,
Right.
like, I'll answer the phone. But if it's
Yeah.
not important, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to,
Mhm.
I'm not going to go do something that's not important. If it's important, of course I'm going to go. And so, the kids are in school all day, unfortunately, so I don't get to spend a lot of time with them until the evening time. But if so, like on a Wednesday, I mean, I'll work a 12-hour day on a Wednesday. I'm here at 7. I'm at the building till, man, sometimes 9, so longer than 12 hours. But I make sure on Wednesdays that I go home after the kids get home for at least like 2 hours, because I want to spend that time at home with my kids and with my wife. And I don't want to be thinking about what's going on here or what I have to talk about or what I got to do. I make sure that I'm intentional about that. I typically try and be home by 4 p.m., no later, regardless of what I have going on, because I want to spend time with my kids before they have to go to bed and get up early the next morning. And typically, we've got stuff going on at night. We either having people over at our house for dinner, or we have a youth event going on that we're dragging kids to and things like that. So I want there to be a window of time, whether it's 2-3 hours, that I'm with my family and it's me and them. And so I'm very intentional about that. I don't want to be going all day, and then at night giving them a hug and giving them a kiss and being like, sorry, I didn't get to hang out with you today. I'm not going to be that guy. Like, it's not profitable. It's not healthy for a family. And
Good points.
I don't want my kids just seeing their dad pour into the church and not pour into them.
Yeah, I find that it's typically you never regret spending time with family, know. And my kids are grown now, and so ministry takes a different shape because we're not racing to activities anymore, and you have a whole lot more time than you never had before. And but I've never looked back and regretted spending time with the kids and not being at work. So let's close with this question, Boo. Okay. Let's tell me what you think, if you were talking to a young minister starting out, or maybe someone who's been in ministry a long time. What do you think is the best piece of advice that you could give them?
Man, that's a hard one. The best piece of advice, I don't know that it'd be the best, but it's definitely a piece of advice. How about that?
Okay, we'll take it.
I would encourage them to not take it personal, to let what people say brush off what people say, because you're going to be critiqued. Yeah. You're going to be called out on things, and yes, you should listen to their advice, but there's a lot of advice that you just need to move on from. And if they critique you for, you use too much Greek in your sermons, like, brush that off. Mm-hmm. If that's your style, that's your style. If you like wearing a suit and tie, then you wear a suit and tie. If you don't like wearing a tie, then you don't wear a tie. And people are going to critique you up and down the aisle. They're going to have their opinions. That's just because people are passionate about their church. People are passionate about God, and everybody has ideals and goals for the church, and that's wonderful and that's great. But again, I would encourage young preachers, find out your style, find out who you are, and be true to that. Be true to your passions, be true to the visions that you have, and pour into those visions, and don't let the congregation sway you too much from that. Definitely take wisdom, definitely take constructive criticism, but don't become somebody you're not. And don't ever try and please people more than you're pleasing God. And that's a big one, because a lot of us want to be people pleasers, but we can get into the funk of trying to please the congregation, or trying to please, the people that write the big checks at the congregation more than we please God. And that's a big no-no, and that will kill your church. I don't care how big their check is. I don't care how much they slam you or critique you. Like, you be prayerful. You have a vision, and you set that goal and line it with God's will. And I mean, if you have to lose your job for it, then you lose your job. Like, it does not matter. I don't care if I get fired from ministry. I don't care if I get fired from being a preacher. I care about the church. I love God. I love Jesus more than anybody or anything I've ever loved in my life. And I want to be pleasing to him, and so let the critiques bounce off of you, and you'll do well.
I like that. That's really good advice. And I really appreciate the conversation, Boo. Thank you so much for being with us today. And like you, I miss our paths crossing. Maybe we can get together soon. And I want to tell our viewers and listeners that if you have a question specifically about this episode, you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. If you have a question for Boo, we'll make sure that it gets forwarded to him. I'm sure he'd be glad to answer that. And we just thank you for tuning in today. Boo, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks, Chris. I love you, bud.
Love you too. And I'll see you soon. And I'll see all of you soon, hopefully, as well. Spread the word about the podcast. We're on all the platforms. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.